So, the topic before us today is women in Bitcoin tackling gender inequality in the ecosystem. And no one will introduce yourself better than yourself, actually. So, starting from my immediate left, and we'll go walk all the way down. Please tell us your name, what you do, and give us one fun fact about yourself.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Charlene Fadirepo. I'm a Bitcoin activist and educator based in the United States. I have a banking background, so before I went into Bitcoin, I spent about 15 years in the traditional banking sector. I, like many Bitcoiners, wear a lot of different hats. I run a company called Mango Digital Strategies in the United States, and we help small businesses and banks future-proof their growth through Bitcoin. I have a couple of Bitcoin books out. I'm a mom of two, and so I wrote a Bitcoin book called Sade Satoshis, which features a young girl based in Balogun Market in Nigeria, and she sees the value of Satoshis as opposed to Naira. And then the other thing that I do in Bitcoin, I am the founder and the host of the Bitcoin in Africa show. And that's a Bitcoin-only educational podcast where we are committed to telling the story of the amazing Bitcoin revolution that's happening across Africa. And I'm super excited to be here today.
Awesome.
Hi, my name is Amy Karr. My background started in mobile money, working in East Africa. So really working with refugees that were being onboarded into this new system of cashless payments. From there, I worked in executive management, and then through politics, and most recently in humanitarian aid, working in Afghanistan during that central bank collapse and Ukraine. So really this year was able to see the impact Bitcoin has, which really inspired me to start looking at how it can close the gaps and where mobile money hasn't been able to fully penetrate and help women in the same way that it's had that scale with men. So that's kind of the part of the space that interests me the most is how we evolve from mobile money into Bitcoin so that we can continue to onboard women into it and provide them access in a different way that mobile money possibly couldn't.
Awesome. You were supposed to add one fun thing about yourself. Amy, you're supposed to tell us something fun about yourself. Are you a ballerina?
Something fun about myself. I came to Uganda. It was the first real country I visited, and I came at 21 on a one-way ticket and decided to live there indefinitely.
Wow.
Yeah, it lasted years. So it was sort of a plan that once I came, I think as everyone hopefully is experiencing on this continent, you really see the magic and the innovation and the inspiration. And so
awesome.
That's the fun fact, a little wild too.
Awesome.
It says too much.
Hi everyone, my name is Ojoma Ochai. I've spent the last, 17 years working to support entrepreneurs that work in music or film, fashion, and the creative industries generally by designing and delivering projects across Africa and a little bit in the Caribbean. In the last 5 years or so, I've been really interested in the ways that different technologies affect creative expression and these sectors like music and film and fashion. And in that journey, I really came to understand Bitcoin and what it can do for the economic outcomes for people living in places like the countries of Africa. And so I started to do quite a bit of work in that and got involved with B-Trust. So I also sit on the board of B-Trust, which is an organization that seeks to locate, educate, and remunerate African and Global South developers working on open source Bitcoin projects. One fun thing about myself, contrary to the popular myth that all Africans can dance, I cannot dance to save my life, but it does not stop me.
It doesn't stop you from dancing. Well, I actually don't believe you, Ojoma, but we'll definitely get there soon. So, the topic before us, like we said, is tackling gender inequality in the ecosystem, in the tech system, in the finance system. Starting with the finance system, worldwide, women's access to finance is on a low. So I'd like to hear from you guys. What do you think are the influencing factors that cause this particular situation? Charlene?
plethora of reasons why there's a lack of access to finance for women. I think initially it kind of starts in the home. We have a messaging and exposure problem, unfortunately, and this is a phenomenon that exists around the world. Women aren't socialized to go, in some cases aren't socialized to go for the more quantitative careers. They're not socialized to focus on math and science, and in some cases that results in kind of lower confidence and lower levels of literacy, where you see boys and young men are always socialized to either study engineering or study harder sciences. The other thing, when you see in Africa, there's an actual former sector where you see really harsh discriminatory laws barring women from ownership in building wealth. So if you look at Equatorial Guinea and Niger, married women can't even own a bank account, and that is today. And there are other countries where you actually need to have a man beside you before a woman can sign a contract. Wow. But I think the number one thing that I see that keeps women from kind of assessing their full financial power, particularly when it comes to Bitcoin, is fear and doubt. And surprisingly, it's not about fear and doubt about Bitcoin as a monetary technology or Bitcoin as a complex concept. It's fear and doubt about themselves, fear and doubt about their confidence in their own abilities to understand the technology and to execute on the technology. And one last point I'll say, I was talking to my friend Marcelle Lorraine, who is here. She runs Bitcoin Data, which is a women-only education group in Kenya, and we compared notes, and we're seeing these same phenomenons of fear and doubt and lower confidence in women, both in the United States. I see it when I meet women from all over Africa that I'm connected with in my podcast, and she sees it in some of the women that she's teaching. So when you're a woman in Bitcoin, yes, you're absolutely teaching Bitcoin, but you're also teaching a class in financial empowerment and independence and self-sovereignty. And just knowing that and owning that is just really, really important.
Awesome. Amy?
Yeah, I mean, I think the system that's been put forward is also still not equal. You're looking at exactly what Charlene said. You have countries where women can't even have bank accounts, but even in mobile money, you're seeing that based on these fee structures that have been set up, women are still paying almost twice as much in fees just to send shillings in Kenya. And that's because they're sending lower amounts, they're sending them more frequently, and because they don't have the economic incentive to send higher transaction costs, what you're seeing is women are losing their disposable income through just sending peer-to-peer payments, and that's through that peer-to-peer system of M-Pesa. So this system is inherently designed to keep them suppressed, even when we're saying, oh, we've made a new cashless system. And so what Bitcoin does is it comes in and actually changes some of these things that since 2007, yes, there's been a banking system available for them, but has it been equal? Not really. And we really have an opportunity to close that gap and change some of these things that women have experienced that maybe have stopped them from using banking in that way, or have prevented them from trusting that. And when you look at what women want, they really want privacy. They really do, because some women, maybe they're earning money and they don't want their partner to know about that. And so when you can put privacy into these things, you create a system that's more inherently designed for the safety and the education of women, and that's going to bring more people in.
Awesome.
So, three things that align with what both Charlene and Amy have said. I think there's a fundamental cultural reason. It's called the patriarchy. The world is designed to take away the agency and independence of women in many societies, including here in Ghana, in Nigeria, where I'm from, around the world. So I think that fundamentally the systems of the world are designed to take away women's independence, and that includes financial independence, which can only be entrenched by limiting their access to finance. So I feel like there's a fundamental, foundational inequality, as you were saying. If you look at conventional wisdom and research, it talks about low financial literacy of women. With all due respect, that is bullshit, because in many of our countries, women run the homes, right? They're the ones that are budgeting. They're the ones that are managing cash flow in their families.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are saving. They're the ones that are figuring out how to stretch the money the family has as far as it can go.
Yes.
The last I checked, that was financial literacy.
True.
So when people say to us lack of financial literacy, I think what it is lack of literacy of the financial systems that have been designed by the patriarchy to keep women out of the global financial system. I don't think it's lack of financial literacy. Charlene, you talk about fear of failure. I completely agree. Where does that fear of failure come from? Again, we're socialized by the norms and the culture that has been embedded by the patriarchy to make us believe that somehow you're less, somehow you're not good enough because you've got a vagina, right? And so I think another reason why women have low access to finance is because the patriarchal system that we live in has messed up with our brains to create this fear where we're limited by our own selves and aiding the systems that have been put in place to limit us. So those are the three.
Awesome. I connect with what you said with women inherently having the financial understanding on how to manage money. In my home, my mom was the chief accountant of the house. Like, if you wanted your 1,000 naira to stretch across 1 day, she would do it. 2 days, she's down for it. So now that you said, it's actually quite clear that why are we saying women are not financial literate when in African homes, well, I can speak for Nigerian, I don't know how it is in Ghana, but in our African homes, women sort of take charge. So if we give women this opportunity to come, let's bring it down now to the Bitcoin space. I'm starting this question with Ojoma now. If we give women this opportunity to come down to this Bitcoin space, how can they catalyze how are they catalysts for greater Bitcoin adoption?
So, not to put you on the spot, but I have a problem with putting the onus on women to catalyze, right?
Okay.
We didn't create the problem. Why are you calling us to solve
Okay.
it? I'm not saying we haven't got a role, but this is so typical, right? Men mess things up, and then they find a woman, and then they're asking her, how can you catalyze this situation? No. But to answer what I think your question is, which is what is the role of women in supporting Bitcoin adoption, I can answer that. I think there are a number of things. I think one is, it starts in the head, right? Like, women have to believe that they can.
Awesome.
And I feel like the way that we can believe that we can is through a number of things. One is demonstration that it is possible, right? And so whether it's about women taking space and not waiting for somebody to give them the space, or whether it's about people that are influential in the space making space for women's voices to be heard, so that other women can be inspired and stimulated to, first of all, in their heads, know that it is possible. I think that's the first thing. The second thing is, I think initiatives need to be intentional about inclusion. In the way that the patriarchy has been intentional about locking women out, if we want to reverse that, it cannot be a byproduct. It has to be something that we sit and decide every day, that if I'm giving grants to developers to work on open source Bitcoin projects, I need to find the women. No matter how hard it is to find them, I need to find them. If I have to go and a step back and support them to be educated or trained, I have to do that. So I think the onus is on all of us to be intentional. I think another thing that we never talk about is another tool of the patriarchy is harassment and abuse. In many male-dominated industries, it is so hard to be a woman because you don't know what inappropriate comments you're going to hear. You don't know what's, stupid treatments from the other gender.
My gender.
You're going to encounter. And so I think another way that we can catalyze women's participation in Bitcoin is that you people need to stop harassing and abusing women that are working in Bitcoin. We don't talk about it, but it's true. Developers report all kinds of horrific things that they have to go through because they're working with male developers, inappropriate comments, being left out of things, being excluded. So I think a third thing is we have to have, one, men just need to stop abusing and harassing. Two, we need legislation, policies, regulation that make it impossible or at least more difficult for men to get away with that.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Amy?
I mean, I don't know how I could possibly add any more to that because it was an incredible answer of I'm like, yes, 100%. But what I will add is, you know, when we come to Africa, you're on a continent that revolutionized cashless payments. You're in a place where 87% of the GDP in Kenya is via mobile wallet. I think it's 84 in Ghana. That's the second highest outside of China with a way lower smartphone penetration. So you also need to look at all of the women that you encounter as experts. They put in their 10,000 hours in mobile payments. The lens that they have on is so much more inherent and intuitive for what we're doing because it's the life they lead. They're also experiencing the pain points every day. And when you look in a place like Kenya that has such a robust startup scene, there's so much talent on this continent that isn't being accessed. You know, you have women that were engineers on mobile money that have scaled a system worldwide that really haven't been brought into this space. You have strategists, you have people who went into the villages and made sure that adoption happened. And I don't see them represented in this space yet, but I would go ahead and call them the experts. They're the women that really built, I think what inspired a lot of what we're doing today. And so if I look around, I really want to encourage people to look at the talent here because everyone is an expert. And I think continue to ask questions, continue to just know that what you're going to hear is a way different lens than you're going to get anywhere else in the world because it's so part of, number one, the way that payments have been done, but part of like the most innovative heart of everything incredible that I've seen across this continent comes from the spirit of saying, like, we changed the way that mobile payments were done. And I think that's something that only this continent can be credited for right now.
Awesome. Thank you. Charlene?
And the only thing I'll add to that is that, I think I really love that point about being intentional because I definitely believe that patriarchy is a system that was intentionally put in place to keep certain people over here and other folks up there. And I think Bitcoin is an opportunity to redesign a bad system. And so when we say intentional, I think it's important to put women in positions, but they have to be in positions of power. So what does that look like? So it would be great if if this woman works in your Bitcoin company. It's even better if she's in the C-suite, right? In addition to the C-suite, it's even better if she's on the board of directors. So if these folks, everyone in the audience, if you're building a Bitcoin company, make sure there are a couple of women in your C-suite and on your board of directors. If you're educating in Bitcoin, what does that mean? Make sure that at least half of the people that you're educating are women, and make sure you have women educators, right? Because women need to see themselves in the space in order to believe that they can do it. And I think we just have to really focus. And every time we're in this space, we have to say, okay, am I operating from a space that includes everybody? And the last thing, and I think this point about developers are so important because there's so many wonderful development grants. But how many of those development grants are going to women? A woman cannot develop in Bitcoin without being trained and without the support. So we've got to start from the beginning to make sure that we have that group of talented developers, and they need to be grown over time. So I just think in general, we just need to focus and be intentional. There are other industries that have done this. It's not hard, but we have to focus. And I think this idea of putting women in power is the key to success.
Thank you very much. I think we could take note from that if the patriarchy has been intentional in keeping women out, then the change has to come from intentional actions to bring women back into the system. Charlene, you've been named one of the 5 women to watch in crypto, and you've had at least 15 years experience. Please, a round of applause for that. One of the 5 women to watch in crypto. If you're not watching her show, I think you should go on YouTube and search for her and subscribe, right? We do that? Subscribe, yes. We're sneaking in one cheap promotion there. So, you're 15 years in a traditional finance background. What do you think are the shortcomings from that aspect of finance?
Yeah, so if you look at the banking industry, well, in general, you see 56% of the professionals in the banking industry in the United States are women. However, those women are paid 30% less than their male counterparts. You know, one of the biggest things that we see in the banking industry is that there's a significant gender pay gap. So that is in the United States, and that's all around the world. But it's important to understand why we might have that gender pay gap. When it comes to, in certain areas, women, of course, in terms of they're going to be head of household, they're going to be spending more time out of the home, taking care of their children, probably one of the most important, if this is your choice, probably one of the most important jobs in the world, yet there's no monetary upgrade for that additional work. So if we look at the traditional banking system, we can see companies being intentional about a couple of different areas. They're looking at recruitment, making sure that women are in the door as analysts. They're looking at retention, making sure women stay in the company, and they're looking at advancement, making sure that if you're bringing in a woman as an analyst, she has the support, she has the nurturing, she has the sponsors and the information to be able to assume her position, hopefully a position of power in that particular Bitcoin company. So we have a blueprint of what works. And if we're really thinking that Bitcoin is a brand new financial ecosystem that we can build that includes everybody in the entire world, we have to be thoughtful about how we're building that ecosystem when it comes to the companies, when it comes to development communities, and even when it comes to the communities of people that come to this conference. There should be more women here in the conference. So if you're going to a Bitcoin conference, the next time you sign up for an event or a meetup, bring your sister, bring your mother, bring your cousin. Because as we heard, you know, the beauty of this Bitcoin space is the interconnectedness of our community, and that's a human interconnectedness. We cannot do this alone, and we can't do this without women.
Oh, thank you very much, Charlene. Please, if you're here with any of your siblings, can you raise your hand up? Nobody.
Did anyone bring family members?
Did you bring any family member here?
So that's your homework for the day.
That's a homework. Next time we're having a conference, make sure you're coming with a sibling or somebody. So one more question, Charlene. You said one of the things that was done, or that could be done in the new ecosystem of Bitcoin is being able to bring in women, retain them, and give them supporting tools that could keep them in the system. In the traditional system per se, has this been a thing, or?
I think it's been a challenge. It's been a challenge. I mean, I think it's worked in some cases and it hasn't worked in others. I'll give you an example. So I used to work in management consulting in a Big Four company in the bank regulation space, and I was on the partner track, and I remember being really excited about being a partner, and I looked around the firm and I was trying to find that woman partner that I wanted to be, and I couldn't find her. And at that moment, it clicked to me that this was not the place for me. So women will be what they see. So we need to see other women in positions of power, in positions of leadership, so that the women, the younger women that are trying to figure out where they want to be in this space can know that there's a place for them. It's a signal to, Ojoma said, this agency. You know, when you see women in Bitcoin panel, that's a signal to other women that they have agency in the space and they can be successful in the space.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Amy, you have a background in humanitarian aids. You've developed a long span of career in doing things in Eastern Africa. What are the things you've learned from women on the ground in relation to finance?
Yeah, I think, you know, the biggest thing is how so much of finance starts in community. And that's one of the biggest components of adoption is that community base. When you look at village savings and loan programs and the way that women save money together to make big purchases or support each other in times of emergencies, those groups and cooperatives were started in villages, and it was built on trust networks where people had to verify how much money was in the box, which sounds very familiar to a system I've been hearing about a lot this week. You know, but we don't credit them with that. We don't credit them with coming together and forming these coalitions and doing the analog version of a lot of what we're doing today. And so the more, you know, you can look at that, I think that was one of the big things, is continuing to learn from the behaviors of women, because women are the ones that are saying, okay, we actually need this to be more of a savings tool than a spending tool. We need it to be more private because maybe we don't want someone to understand how much money we have because we're saving to put a daughter in school. And those are the different things that a lot of this technology really lends itself to. And so when I look at it, I think we're, number one, solving for a lot of these things that you would see on the ground and not quite know how mobile money could fix that. Now, it can do a lot, and I think obviously it brought a lot of people into a banking system for them, but it's still not working in the way that it's needed. And so when you look at a refugee, for instance, or the way that Bitcoin can be used as a humanitarian tool, which Alex Gladstein is so good at describing, and Roya and everyone, is really like, how is this used as a humanitarian tool? Well, look at what refugees have to do. You know, they have to oftentimes give up so much of their financial income. They have to leave a country without anything. And when you can't take your money, that makes you more vulnerable. And so we've created a mobile money system that actually leaves people more vulnerable in their time of crisis. Now, yes, it helps them once they get to the camp and once they can get onboarded into that, but if you can't bring what you've earned from before, you start back at zero. And we can really prevent that. These are preventable crises. And more when you start listening to people on the ground, when you start listening to people who are actually needing this and experiencing different pain points that we would have never and hopefully will never experience, you're gonna learn how the technology serves us in so many ways that we can't even imagine yet, because that's not our life. And I think when we can start opening it up more as a humanitarian tool, more as a tool of impact, you're gonna see a lot of different things change. And that's, you know, by continuing to listen to communities, by continuing to go into regions where people need it critically, and learning from what behaviors do they need it to do, how do they need it to be shaped, and what is the adoption there, and how is that helpful. And I think that's a lot of like what working in it taught me was, you know, seeing entrepreneurs that were just starting their first businesses in a camp have to figure out how to accept money, how to figure out how to start up a company, and then use this as the backbone to accept it. That's a huge job to take on. But then, you know, once again, women are the ones paying the bills. They're the ones doing the spending. And we know the most important thing is when you give a woman more disposable income, she invests it in education, healthcare, and the welfare of her family. And so what more could we want as a long-term impact of this technology than to know that by dedicating our efforts and energy to this, by fixing some of the issues that mobile money could never solve for, we're actually able to put more women in school, create more generational wealth, and create more generations that are educated just by simply providing more disposable income. And remittances take a lot of that disposable income right now.
All right, awesome. Thank you very much. I'm moving on to OJ. Can I call you OJ?
Sure.
Okay, awesome. So OJ, you have a vast knowledge and a vast experience in the tech space. And what do you have to say for women who are, what are the entry points for women who want to come into tech space? And while you're answering that, there's this feeling that there's a natural disposition for women to some roles, and they thrive better in some roles and they thrive better in other roles, and they do not. You know, so you feel this disposition actually exists, and what do you have to say about that?
Good question. So when we think about natural disposition, I've heard, and I'm sure, who here has heard that men are rational, analytical, logical, thank you, and women are irrational, emotional, and such nonsense. As far as I know, all the senseless wars that we've had are started by these rational, logical, analytical men that, with all their rationale and all their logical, they cannot figure out a way to settle disputes without going to fight like cavemen. So that thing about natural disposition, I don't know where it comes from, but I can guess that there's a system that has been designed to make us believe that there is a natural disposition that makes men somehow more reliable and more logical, which is evidently not the case. So as far as I'm concerned, thank you. As far as I'm concerned, unless Bitcoin mining requires that we go with pickaxes and hack with physical strength at rocks to bring out the Bitcoin, unless Bitcoin development requires us to throw the scripts as far as we can with our strong arms, unless leadership of the Bitcoin community and the ecosystem requires us to physically go into battle, I do not believe that there's any such thing as a natural disposition. I do not believe, and I definitely do not agree, that women are better suited to any roles. And so I think the simple answer to your question about entry points for women is the entry point for any woman is whatever entry point she wants based on what she wants to do with her life.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you very much. Also, in adding to that, part of what we do in the, let me start the story from another angle. Paxful has an educational center in Nigeria, in Abuja, called Pax Nigeria. And when it was being created, one of the core factors of building it was educating people, and not just anybody. The funny part was when it started, we realized that a lot of people coming into the space were just males, and nobody else wanted to learn. So we intentionally, like you said, decided to create a Women in Bitcoin club in Nigeria. Where's my friend? Tochi, where are you? Oh, so Tochi is over there. Tochi is the current educator for the Women in Bitcoin club in Pax Nigeria. She's also a colleague of mine. She will also be on the panel session here too. So I feel it's right, because when you do it that way, you sort of level out the playing field and everybody gets an equal starting point. Actually, that question leads to the next question, where it says, so if we can clearly see that the impact in the industry is going to be massive. So I want to take the questions one by one. I want Charlene to tell us about how she sees this impact in the finance sector, how Amy sees this impact in the humanitarian sector, and how Ojoma sees the impact that is leveling out the playing field and allowing women and men start together at equal opportunities. I want to see you talk about it too in the employment sector. So, Charlene?
Well, I'll just start with a quote by Dr. James Aggrey. He's a Ghanaian sociologist. I think you've heard a lot of quotes by him. When you educate a woman, you educate a nation. So when you bring women into Bitcoin, you're able to kind of upgrade the whole world. I think that when you bring women into Bitcoin, just like we always, we talk about here that, Africa has very unique problems, and Africans are very sensitive and they understand those unique problems because they've lived them. Well, in that same way, women understand the problems of women. And so if you have women creating companies that are going to solve the unique and difficult challenges of women, you get a better end result for everybody. And that also means that we're going to have Bitcoin companies that are going to resonate and speak to everybody. And so I think that in the long term, you have just a better system that finally includes everyone.
Awesome, thank you. Amy?
I think, if by focusing on how we're making sure that women are protected in these crisis situations, I mean, when you think about a crisis, oftentimes the people that are impacted most are women and children. And so the more and more that we can continue to make sure that Bitcoin is a solution that works in a crisis, that works for women when they're in a time of need, and that addresses these issues that we know they're having and that they're telling us they're having around privacy and around banking, we're really creating a tool that will fundamentally change outcomes for their future and for their children's future. I think that's the biggest thing. And the thing I want everyone to just kind of be reminded of as we end here is women are still the largest majority of the unbanked. Mm-hmm. And that's our largest potential. We're not convincing them to use a new system, we're bringing them a system that's gonna work better for them. And so again, when we're thinking about where the opportunity is, women still need a solution and we have one. So again, just continue to focus on women and you're gonna see transformational growth, because when women bring a product into their home, they're loyal to it. And that's the number one thing you're hearing, is women are loyal to a product. When they're not going to switch if you've helped them save money, if you've helped them save and they're doing their banking with you, you're their provider. And again, like continue to go into the communities, to know that everything has to start within the communities, from understanding them and from being able to support them in their biggest times of need. And we're going to experience a lot of that in the world, and so continue to always look at this as a humanitarian tool, because the outcomes it's providing really are changing futures in a way that hopefully we won't have as many crises, I would hope.
Thank you. Ojai?
So I think two things. I think if we manage to achieve sort of equality and inclusion, two things. One is we reverse centuries, millenniums. Is it millenniums or millennia?
Well, are you talking about the generation?
Anyway, hundreds and thousands of years, we will manage to reverse social injustice that has essentially locked out half of the world from accessing services, accessing the financial system, and participating in a way that's comparable to their peers in the world. So I think the first benefit is that we reverse that injustice. And I believe that a lot of people that believe in Bitcoin believe in it because we see it as a tool for achieving social justice. We see it as a tool for achieving freedom. So I feel like if we're able to include more women and provide more access to women, then that's the first thing. As you were saying, Amy, I think the second thing is the multiplier effect, right? The benefit of inclusion of women is not just on the women themselves, it's on their children. It's on the outcomes in their children's education, their children's health, and society. And it may sound like an exaggeration, but I feel like if we include more women, we will have a better, safer world. Because, women are women.
And as you said, the evidence shows that men are the ones who are rational and go to war.
I was only pointing out the evidence before me.
All right, so we are about to round up, and like Charlene said, putting women out there so that younger ones can be able to look into the system and see that women are already far ahead of them and can actually attain what these ladies have done. I would like for you guys to leave one word of advice for the young girl out there, the young one in Kenya, the young one in Balogun, right? Balogun, yeah. Let them hear you say one word of advice to them, and we'll call it a wrap.
I would just say two things. I think I would encourage young women in Bitcoin to show up and take up space. Recognize the unique perspective that you have. Own the value that you bring to a company, a project, or even, a conversation. Make sure you're getting paid for that value that's commensurate with what you're bringing to the table. That's really important. Be confident in your ability to stand shoulders to shoulders to other folks that can talk about the protocol, because you can talk about it too. But you can probably talk about it in a way that resonates with people that other people can't reach, and that's valuable. You need to own that. The other thing I want to talk about is what Ojoma said, is this abuse. We don't talk a lot about the abuse. It is real. The disrespect is real. So you will need tough skin. But just know, we have to say it. It is constant. It is real. But Bitcoin gives women wings because they have the power to choose a better life for their family and for their communities and for their countries. So it's important for you to be in this space so you can help other women choose a better life. That's what I would say.
Awesome. The power to choose. Amy?
I'm like soaking that in. I needed something.
You're still soaking that in. Should we move to Ojai?
Yeah, I think it's, again, continue to ask questions. That's the main thing. Even myself in the space I've been doing here is try to learn new parts of it, try to get more comfortable with it, because we all know risk stops us from doing things that are good for us, and like that fear. And so the more you can become comfortable with it and ask the questions and just feel comfortable knowing there's a lot to learn, I would just encourage people to keep doing that, because that's what I'm doing myself. So that's the best advice I can give.
Awesome. Ojai?
Two things. I think the first thing is reject the label. To any young woman wanting to get into Bitcoin, reject any label that is put on you that you have not chosen for yourself. to the earlier question about what people think women can and can't do. So the first thing is reject that label. The second thing is, to what you were saying, Charlene, about excellence. I think there's an insidious narrative that is sold to many young women about being the best woman at the thing. And I think in line with rejecting the label, I think young women should aim to be the best person at the thing, period.
Awesome. So, just to sum it all up, from Charlene, you have the power to choose. Amy says, continue learning so you could put yourself in better positions. OJ, reject the label and be just the best. Not the best woman or whatever. Just be the best in it all. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of this panel session. A round of applause from our panelists. And we'll see you guys later. Thank you very much.